Welcome to the San Manuel Airport Layout Plan update. Today is September 1st, 2020, and my name is Charlie McDermott. I am the Aviation Planning Manager for Dibble Engineering, and I am also the project manager on this assignment. We're very excited to have you here with us today. This is the Airport Layout Plan update project for the airport that will be a new vision for the airport for the next 20-year planning horizon. Today I also have with me Jenny Watts. She's a senior aviation planner with Dibble Engineering, and I also have Tom Ray from SUNZIA, and he's going to speak a little bit about the transmission project that really helped inspire the need to update the airport layout plan for the airport. We have a brief agenda that we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about the Planning and Advisory Committee that was formed to help facilitate this project. Tom's going to speak a little bit about his corridor transmission project and how it relates to the airport. I'm going to give a little update about the 2014 Airport Master Plan that was done, and also talk about the Airport Layout Plan update that we're encountering right now. Included in the project is an inventory of the existing airport. So we'll share a little bit about what is entailed with that. And then Jenny's going to talk in more detail about the aviation demand forecast that was prepared as part of the project. And then we will talk about the schedule and the next steps in the overall process. So as I mentioned, there is a planning and advisory committee that was formed to help advise the formulation of this study. Their role is to advise the airport and us as the consultant team on ways to improve the project and identify areas of concern that they have as users and stakeholders at the airport. Their responsibilities, in addition to that, is to attend all the PAC meetings that we have. As I mentioned, provide feedback, and most importantly is to share the progress of the study with the community and to promote the public meetings that we're going to have, like this one, this virtual one, to help us gain feedback from the public as we prepare the project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who's going to share a little bit about the transmission project, as I mentioned, that helped inspire this project. Tom?
Thank you, Charlie. My name is Tom Ray. I've been the project manager for the SUNZIA Southwest Transmission Project since 2006. You can put up the next slide, Charlie. This is a map of the transmission project in both Arizona and New Mexico. This is an approved alignment that was subject of an environmental impact statement that was done in 2008 and finished in 2015 and was led by the Bureau of Land Management. The focus today is around the San Manuel area and some issues that I'll talk about regarding FAA and the planned runway expansion at San Manuel. The project consists of two 500,000 volt transmission lines in a corridor that was identified for about a 520-mile route from the Coolidge area to an area of wind energy development near Corona, New Mexico at the far eastern end. The purpose of the project is to harvest that wind energy and bring it back to grid interconnections in Arizona near Coolidge at the Pinal Central Substation, where it can flow to Arizona utilities and into California. There's a lot of wind development being planned out there. So this is a general map of the project. On our website, sunzia.net, there are numerous more detailed maps that you're welcome to look at your leisure. Next slide. So we started a permitting activity in September of 2008 with filing of a Form SF-299 with the Bureau of Land Management. That's a right-of-way request on federal land. There's a mixture of land use across the length of the project. In Arizona, there's quite a bit of state trust land that's involved with the route, a small amount of private land, and about 50 miles, I believe, of federal land, BLM land, at the far eastern end of the route in Arizona. The BLM completed the NEPA process, National Environmental Policy Act, and the Environmental Impact Statement with a record of decision in January of 2015. And then we've executed a right-of-way grant agreement for use of federal right-of-way in September of 2016. Arizona has state siting requirements for transmission lines that are 115,000 volts or higher. And the statutory reference for that is Arizona Revised Statutes 40-360. It's the jurisdiction for that siting permit, which is called the Certificate of Environmental Compatibility, is handled by the Arizona Power Plant and Transmission Line Siting Committee and the Arizona Corporation Commission. And we completed that process in February of 2016 when the CEC was granted by the Arizona Corporation Commission. Somewhat related to this activity has been an agreement developed between SUNZIA and the Department of Defense and Department of Army to mitigate impacts, particularly in New Mexico near the White Sands Missile Range at the other end of the line. Next slide. This is a close-up of the San Manuel area. This is in Pinal County. What you're seeing here on the map in the white corridor is a 2,500 foot wide siding corridor within which the two 500 kV transmission lines will be placed. Each transmission line will be in a 200 foot wide right of way, and the black line you see in the middle of the white corridor is the approximate location of both of those lines. So within the 2,500 foot siding corridor, we will place these two transmission lines, and this was a subject of approval by the Corporation Commission when the CEC was granted. You'll see in the corner of the map there, just northeast of Oracle State Park's boundary, a little crosshatched area, and that is a relocation of the project lines that resulted from an FAA hazard determination that itself arose from the 2014 airport layout plan for San Manuel Airport, which includes an extension of a runway there to the northwest. And Charlie's going to talk more about that in a minute. But this shows that we would have to move the project lines outside of the corridor if, in fact, we can't find a way to mitigate the need to do so through the revision to the airport layout plan, which we believe we can. And in addition to that, next slide, Charlie. The notice of hazard termination that was issued in January of 2018 by FAA would require realignment, as I've indicated on the previous map, and marking and lighting of 21 towers and the phase conductors themselves between those 21 towers based on the planned extension of the runway at San Manuel Airport. We actually filed an application under ARS 40-252 to ask the Commission to amend the CEC to accommodate this FAA relocation requirement. The Commission in November of 2018 decided to hold off on action on it to allow us to conduct a public meeting in Oracle, which we did on April 24th, 2019. And subsequent to that public meeting, through consultation with FAA, we believe that once the airport layout plan is revised, this relocation requirement will be withdrawn by FAA, as well as the lighting requirement on the towers. So there was quite a bit of concern about lighting those towers near the state park, which is a dark sky area, and that was expressed vociferously at the public meeting on April 24th of last year. Next slide.
So with that, Tom, I'll pick it up from here. So the airport master plan that was prepared in 2014 was a very optimistic master plan. As Tom had mentioned, it did include a runway extension and a pretty robust aviation forecast, and considered a higher performing aircraft that Jenny will speak about in a moment. But just in general, there are a few highlights from the master plan that I'd like to point out. The first one is what we refer to, or what the FAA refers to as the runway design code. The existing runway design code for the airport is a B1, and it also recommended an ultimate runway design code of a B2, and Jenny's going to explain in a few minutes what that means. But that's a very important criteria that we follow when we prepare a master plan. In addition, the 2014 master plan suggested that based aircraft would more than double over the planning period. And again, the planning period is an approximate 20-year planning horizon. Total annual operations were expected to also more than double over the planning period. The critical aircraft, which is what we have to select to basically plan the future of the airport around for that 2014 master plan, was a Cessna 14A. And again, that was a runway design code B1. It also suggested that the ultimate critical aircraft be the Cessna Citation 560, which falls under the B2 category. As I mentioned, the runway at the airport right now is 4,214 feet, and the master plan had suggested an ultimate runway length of 6,000 feet, and the extension of the runway was to the northwest. This aerial just gives you an overview of the airport. Again, this is the direction in which the previous master plan suggested a runway be extended. And as you can see, the airport is laid out in a very remote and open area. But what we look at from a planning perspective is not just the airfield, but the airspace that surrounds the airport for numerous miles out in each direction. So from a bigger picture perspective, projects such as the SUNZIA project can become problematic depending on what is being proposed at the airport and the relationship of the airport to the transmission project. So what we're going to look at in this project is, again, a long-range planning document. It really becomes a tool for FAA as they look to fund various projects over the planning horizon. The airport layout plan that we're preparing also helps inform land uses and land use planning around the airport. So as the county is approached by developers or residents that want to develop near the airport, this airport layout plan update will provide them suggested land use compatibility guidelines to help them ensure that what is developed near and around the airport would be done so in a compatible manner. Typically, airport layout plans are updated. It is common that they are updated every 5 to 10 years, if sometimes even sooner, if something changes dramatically at the airport, or if there is a need to revisit the vision of the airport, which is the case right now for this particular study. There are two important elements that the FAA reviews and approves as part of our process. The first one is the aviation demand forecasts. FAA will actually approve those, and they also approve the airport layout plan itself. And an airport layout plan is one drawing in a series of drawings that make up the airport layout plan drawing set. And the airport layout plan shows the future development graphically, so the FAA can review that and ensure that all the design criteria are met, and then it meets other FAA standards. So as I mentioned, we prepared an inventory as part of the process of developing the airport layout plan study. This graphic shows, this is a graphic from the report that shows all of the infrastructure at the airport. The airport has a small administration building that has several navigational aids that the pilots will use to safely land and depart from the airport. There also are a number of hangars, storage hangars, that are available to the public, both on the northwest end of the apron and down at the southeast end of the airfield. The airport is also equipped with on-site fuel storage or fuel capabilities for aircraft to fly in and to refuel. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, and she's going to speak to the aviation demand forecast and the critical aircraft component.
Great, thank you. So before I get into the forecast piece of our study, I just wanted to review some of the terms that Charlie had mentioned before. A few slides ago, he talked about the runway design code and the terms B1 and B2. So again, these are classifications that the FAA has come up with to basically classify different sized aircraft. And it's based upon a operational characteristic and also a physical characteristic. So when we say that right now the runway design code at San Manuel is a B1, you can see that that is for aircraft that fall into that category that's highlighted there in the green. The master plan in 2014 was recommending that the design code change to a B2, and so you'll see that group 2 kind of goes up. That just gives an overview of those terms so you can better understand what that means for the critical aircraft. Next slide, Charlie. And here, this again, according to the 2014 Airport Master Plan, the Cessna 414 Chancellor was determined to be the critical aircraft. Now, part of this study is for us to reevaluate that assessment and make sure that that is still the case moving forward with this next 20-year planning period. That's a picture of it. It is a twin engine aircraft. Most of the aircraft that are at San Manuel are single engine aircraft, but again, the FAA defines the critical aircraft as the most demanding aircraft type that may use the airport. And their term for regular use means that the aircraft must be using the airfield 500 for 500 annual operations in order to be considered the critical aircraft. Next slide. Before we get into the forecast actual methodologies and outcome, just to give you a brief overview of what an aviation forecast is. Basically, it's a forecasting tool, as the name would suggest, but it really provides the basis for the airport development needs in that 20-year time frame. And again, there's different forecasting methods that can be used to do this. Usually in master plans, you'll have some kind of combination of methodology. For this master plan update, we did not introduce any new methodologies to determine these forecasts, but we looked at the one that was provided in the 2014 master plan and then decided if that was still valid at this point in time. What we need to begin the forecasting process, you need a baseline data. So this slide shows the existing based aircraft and the estimated aircraft operations that were provided by airport management for this ALP update. Okay, so again, going into this ALP update, in addition to using the current baseline data, we also want to review the forecasts that were created in recent years. So we're looking at the Airport Master Plan forecast that was developed in 2014, and then we're also looking at the Arizona State Aviation System Plan that was recently completed in 2018. If you're interested in reading that, you can find it on ADOT Aeronautics website, if you're curious. And then we also looked at the FAA terminal area forecast. The FAA creates forecasts for both commercial service and general aviation airports every year. And so we looked at the most current version of that. In reviewing these forecasts for San Manuel, we basically came to several conclusions. One, as Charlie mentioned, that the forecast in the 2014 master plan, although they were of good sound methodology, they just appeared to be a little bit too aggressive for what is actually currently the activity that's currently occurring at the airport today. And so then we looked at the FAA's terminal area forecast, and they're basically showing no growth for San Manuel, which that's not uncommon for the FAA's forecast to do that, particularly at airports that do not have an air traffic control tower to track operations. But we know from talking to airport management that, you know, showing no growth at San Manuel is probably not really accurate either. So then that left us with the Arizona SASP forecast. And what both the based aircraft and the total annual operations forecast showed was conservative growth. It wasn't anything too aggressive, but it did show some positive growth in both based aircraft and operations. So based on that, we selected the Arizona SASP preferred forecast and applied it to the baseline data for San Manuel. Next slide. So here you'll see the 2020 baseline data 27, and the we chose to use the SASP preferred alternative used a growth rate of 2.07%, and basically that was the Pinal County population growth. So when you apply that growth rate to the baseline, you'll see the breakdown there, which again shows pretty much conservative growth in based aircraft. And we feel like that's fairly accurate given our conversations with airport management. Next slide. Another component of the based aircraft forecast, the FAA likes to break it out into what they call the based aircraft fleet mix. This basically just gives you an idea of the types of aircraft that your forecast will have. So we know at San Manuel that traditionally and historically, single engine piston aircraft are the majority of the based aircraft. And there are two rotorcraft, although technically at San Manuel they are gyroplanes, but according to the FAA, they belong in the rotorcraft category. So you'll see how it's broken up right now between the 25 single engine piston today and the two gyroplanes, or in the rotorcraft category. And then using that growth rate, that just shows the breakdown. Now we are forecasting that it's possible that a multi-engine piston aircraft could be stationed at San Manuel or based at San Manuel in the future, depending on some of the development needs that we're going to be recommending. Next slide. And then with the annual operations forecast, the SAS preferred methodology used a method that they developed called the ARC category growth rate. And for the types of aircraft that use San Manuel and fitting into that B1 category, they used a growth rate of 0.08%. So again, we took that growth rate and applied it to the baseline operation data for San Manuel. And again, these are estimates because, you know, there's no real good way of tracking the operations at San Manuel, but these are an estimate provided by airport management that the FAA also uses. Next slide. And finally, with the preferred based aircraft and operations that we just showed you in the previous slides, the final piece of the forecast is really to make a critical aircraft determination. Again, as Charlie mentioned, in the 2014 master plan, it was determined that the critical aircraft was the Cessna 414 Chancellor. And again, that was the most demanding aircraft that was likely to use the aircraft or had shown to use the aircraft on a regular use basis. Now, with the review of this piece for this master plan or ALP update, we reviewed some data. Now, because there is not a good method for tracking operations at the airport, we had to use the FAA's database called the Traffic Flow Management System Count database. And this is a really good database. It gives you a lot of information on the aircrafts that are using the airport. Unfortunately, it's usually just, well, not usually, it's only for aircraft that use or file an IFR flight plan to or from the airport, meaning they're flying on the instruments. Most of the traffic at San Manuel is done under visual conditions or in VMC or a VFR flight plan. So we really didn't get a great number of operations count using this method, but the data did show that there is only one larger or turbine aircraft, one Cessna Citation was shown to have used the airport in like the last 4-year period. And there's really no indicator that the operations have changed or will be changing into the next 20 years. And therefore, we have decided to have the Cessna 414 Chancellor remain as the critical aircraft. And now what that means is then that airport reference code and also the runway design code will remain at B1. Again, there's no indication at this time that the plans that are shown on the 2014 master plan with the runway extension and the operation by the Cessna aircraft, that will actually come to fruition in this 20-year time period. And the county has really kind of adjusted their plan for the airport, which now kind of aligns better for Tom's project, for the SUNZIA project.
Thank you, Jenny. So looking at next steps, we are going to prepare the working paper number 2. Working paper number 2 will include the facility requirements both on the land side and air side of the airport. And what facility requirements are, what we will do is we will take the forecast that Jenny prepared and we will apply that to the airport and say what facilities do we need to support that traffic, both on the land side and the air side. So we'll look at, does the airport need additional hangars? Does it need additional apron space? Are the taxiways adequate? And is there a need to extend the runway? So we will apply everything from those forecasts to arrive at the facility requirements that the airport will need for the next 20-year planning period. We'll take all that information and again, we will incorporate that into the airport layout plan drawing set. Because as I had mentioned, there are airspace drawings that we have to prepare, property map, and again the airport layout plan itself that shows the proposed development on and around the airport. We'll also prepare an implementation and a financial plan, and again that gets back to FAA's desire to have a tool that they can use to help fund the projects over the planning period. So it kind of breaks down the projects and assigns cost to them, and we sequence them so they logically will flow, and something isn't constructed that will be in the way of something in the future. So we try to make sure that things are logically planned out. So that's where we're going next with the working papers. Whoops. And just in terms of a schedule, we did receive a notice to proceed back in late June. The inventory is completed and the forecasts are completed and have been submitted to FAA. Both the inventory and the forecast comprise the first working paper. And as I mentioned, we're going to move forward with the facility requirements next. The plan is to have the facility requirements and the development options and the implementation and financial plan prepared in the October timeframe and publish that next working paper by late October. The ALP drawing set and the draft final report are planned to be submitted to the county in the November timeframe, with the final report and ALP drawing set to the county Board of Supervisors in February of 2021. In terms of public engagement, we had our first PAC meeting last week with the group, so that's completed. We will have 2 more, one in October and one in December. Today is our first public meeting, although it's virtual. We are anticipating having another public meeting, hopefully in person, in the December timeframe. Again, before it goes to the Board of Supervisors in February for final adoption and approval for them to submit it to FAA to allow FAA to approve the airport layout plan drawing itself. In terms of documents, the PAC members were provided a copy of the first working paper, and they will also be sent the second working paper prior to our next PAC meeting. The first working paper, well, actually all of the working papers and the report itself will be available on the county's website. If you go to the airport pages, you will see San Manuel Airport. At that location, you will find the first working paper. As I mentioned, you will also see the second working paper when that is published, and the draft and the final reports will also be contained at this location. We do ask that there is a location on at that site to provide feedback and comments, not only on this presentation, but on the future ones as well. And we encourage folks to take time to look at the document and think about the vision that the county has for the airport going forward, and to provide us your feedback and comments so we can make sure that the vision of the airport meets the needs and the desires of the community and makes for the best facility possible for the county. With that, we do have some contact information. Jim Petty is the direct point of contact for Pinal County. Parrish is out at the airport on a daily basis. And again, my name is Charlie McDermott with Dibble Engineering, and Jenny Watts with Dibble Engineering also. So with that, I would just like to thank everyone for your time today in viewing our presentation. And please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions about the first working paper or the project in general. But again, the website is available to leave written comments, but please feel free to contact us if you would like. So thank you very much, and we look forward to engaging with you again at our next public meeting. Thank you.